Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be taking a look at a very recent event that have just ended, and it is the Vugar Gashimov Memorial 2024. So this tournament was actually also a very important tournament actually. So let's take a look, and it has already ended. It was held in Azerbaijan. The time control are both are rapid and blitz. And let's see the result. So the overall result is Nepomniachtchi in first place and Nodirbek Abdusattorov in second place, and then so on. So this is the rapid rank. So Nepo is still in first place, and in the blitz area, Nodirbek is the first place. So in the end, Nepo was still number one and Nodirbek was number two. So these two players are all actually extremely strong grandmasters. Nepo is from Russia, and he had been competing in the world championship for a lot, in my memory already 2 times, or probably even more. And Nodirbek is Uzbekistan's rising star because he is very young, but at the same time he is very strong. So today, even though this tournament has already ended, we are still going to be covering a game, and this game is played between Nodirbek Abdusattorov against Nepomniachtchi. So this game was a rapid game, and let's see how it went. So Nodirbek is white, and he started with d4, the queen's pawn opening, and Lam played knight f6, knight f3, d5, and e3. So actually this e3 move is like a very solid variation for white, because most of the times white just goes, for example, like c4 or g3, or bishop f4, these kinds of lines. And it's actually more common to first of all develop your bishop and then go e3. But if you go e3 immediately in this position, then most of the times you'll have to develop your bishop this way with b3, bishop b2, because the bishop is being blocked by the e3 pawn right now. So e3 is actually a very solid variation chosen by Nodirbek, probably because he is playing against Nepo, he is playing against a very strong player. So he thought that, okay, I'm just gonna play something very solid, and if it ended in a draw, then it's just no problems with me. So e3 was played, and in the game, Nepo played e6. So just like mirror chess, copying what white is doing. Bishop d3 and now b6. So actually it's just the same reason. Black is not going to develop the bishop this way because it has been blocked by the e-pawn, but instead it will develop this way. We're even going to bishop a6 at some point. In the game, b3 was played and bishop b4 check. Here c3 was played, kicking this bishop back. If you go bishop d2 instead, to offer a trade of bishops, then actually here black will not trade, but instead just go back to bishop d6. And the main problem for white is that this bishop is actually misplaced on d2 because it is being blocked by the e3 pawn, and also, it should have been on b2, but instead it were on this file diagonal, and it's actually very passive. So probably in the future it'll have to go, for example, to c3, back to b2, and then push c4, but that will take a lot of moves. So that is why here bishop d2 is not a good option. And in the game, Nodirbek played c3, the best move, and after bishop d6, bishop b2. You might be wondering, why not go bishop a3 to offer a trade of bishops? Because it is clear that this bishop on d6 is much more active than this bishop on c1. And if the bishop were on b2, then it will still be the same. This bishop is much more active than this bishop because it is being blocked by his own pawn chains. But if you go bishop a3 instead, trying to trade the bishops off, then actually black will just trade. And after knight takes a3, here he will go queen e7. And the main problem for white is that this knight needs to go back. For example, it goes back to c2. But actually now there's knight e4, even though white has traded off this d6 dark square bishop, but actually in this position he has to take on e4 because the knight was attacking the c3 pawn, so he has to take. And after d takes e4, knight d2, this position is just simply better for white because the knight and the bishop are much more they're much more activated than these two knights. So that is why bishop a3 is not the best option. Instead, just go bishop b2 to develop. Bishop b7, short castle, knight b d7, knight b d2, c5, and c4. So actually, you can also go like a better option here is to go d takes c5, and there are many options here for black, like 3 options: to take with the knight, to take with the bishop, or to take with the pawn. So if you take with the knight, first of all, there's bishop b5 check, and you have to go back with the knight again. So of course this is not the best variation, because you're just losing a move with moving your knight twice. So let's say if you take with the bishop, white will go c4 to open up this diagonal for this b2 bishop, and also put pressure on the d5 pawn. So after c4, probably black will just go short castle, and then white will go queen e2, and this is just a game both sides will just need to play on. It's a very normal position. And let's go back here. Here, black can also take with the b pawn, but if you take with the b pawn, white again can go c4, and it is the same idea as bishop c5 and then c4. So in the game, Nodirbek played c4 immediately, and after c takes d4, knight takes d4. If you take with the pawn here with e takes d4, then actually there is the main problem is that this pawn blocked this bishop, and it's actually a main weakness in this position, because this bishop is now this pawn cannot be moved unless black offers a trade. But if it doesn't move, then this bishop is just simply trapped inside. So that is why you do not take with the pawn, and if you take with the bishop, of course you're just losing material after e5 and then e4. So let's go back instead. White played knight takes d4, which is the best option. And after short castle, c takes d5, bishop takes d5, queen e2, queen e7, bishop b5. Bishop b5 may not be the best option here, because it's not a necessary move here. Instead, you just need to go, for example, a4 or knight c4, these kinds of moves. If you go bishop b5, actually I'm not sure what bishop b5 is doing. I mean, it looks a little bit unnecessary, basically. So in the game, but anyways, Nodirbek played bishop b5, and actually after this move, the position is almost equalized, and I think black is even slightly better here, because you can see that black's, especially the minor pieces, are a little bit more active than white's minor pieces. So in the game, rook a8 was played, and after bishop a6, attacking the rook c d8. So actually, I think both sides don't really have a clear plan in this situation, because of course the position is there are no tactics, basically, and both sides need to find a correct plan. But when you have a hard time to find a plan, then probably you'll just play moves you'll just play something like rook c d8, rook a c8 and then rook c d8, these kinds of waiting moves, and wait for your opponent to do something or to react. So in the game, rook a c1 was played, knight c5 and bishop c4, offering a trade of bishops. So in the game, Nepo said, I'm not going to trade because it's very clear that my light square bishop is much more active than your light square bishop, because this bishop is putting a lot of pressure on this diagonal, especially on the c2 pawn. Well, this bishop, even though it is outside of its own pawn chains, but technically speaking, it doesn't really have it doesn't really have a clear spot to attack. So there's just no pawns or no pieces for it to attack. So it's basically just lost its own directions. So in the game, bishop a8 was played, and knight to f3. And after bishop e4, both sides are just playing these kinds of waiting moves and waiting for the opponent to react. And after rook f d8, h6. So h6 is actually a very necessary move, because you'll always have to prevent knight g5 ideas, and also it is very necessary for you to open up what we call a window for the king, because sometimes you might have some back rank problems, and that's the time when you need to open up a window for the king to escape. So in the game, h6 was played, and after a3, so finally white is doing some actions on the queen side, and probably he is going to play b4, these kinds of moves later on. e5 was played, and after knight b5, bishop b8 back. Of course, you do not want to allow white to take this bishop, because then this e5 pawn will be extremely weak. So after bishop b8, knight c3 was played, and after bishop h7, so you can see that black is trying his best to preserve both of his two bishops, because it is clear that both of these bishops are better, are slightly more active than white's two bishops. And after b4, finally white is attacking on the queen side and now asking a question: where should you go with the knight? Do you go back to to d7 or to e6, or do you go to e4 to offer a trade? And Nepo said in the game, I'm going to offer you a trade, because if we're still maintaining all of the pieces on the board, then it will just be too boring. It's hard for us to improve the position. So it's time for me to offer a trade, and let's trade some pieces. So knight e4 was played, and knight takes e4, bishop takes e4 actually. Because if you take with a knight, the main problem is that, taking with the knight is okay, but after rook takes d8, there's rook takes d8, and after, for example, bishop d3, there's this pin, and if this knight somehow moves to g5, for example, then white here will just happily trade the bishops off, and this position, probably it's still an equalized position, but I guess this, it is better for black to preserve this light square bishop. So that's why he took with the bishop, and after knight d2 he went back, bishop g6, e4. So blockading this diagonal and making this bishop suddenly becoming very passive inside the pawn chains. a5 was played, so black is trying to create some counterplay on the queen side by pushing the pawns, and after bishop c3, a takes b4, a takes b4, bishop d6, attacking the b4 pawn, rook b1 defending it, rook c8 attacking, putting pressure on the bishops, and rook b3, rook c7, bishop a6, because here black's idea is to go rook fc8, doubling up the rooks on the file. And it's actually a very deadly idea, because this bishop will be no longer able to move because the c3 bishop is under attack. So it's best for you to first of all prevent this rook fc8 idea. And that is what Nodirbek did in the game. So in the game, rook a8 was played, attacking the bishop, and f3. So f3 is actually a very necessary move in this position, because this e4 pawn is very weak. If you want to activate or maneuver your queens in the next moves to another spot, then you might be having problems with this e4 pawn. So it's of course, first of all, very important for you to defend the e4 pawn with the pawn f3. Rook c8-7 was played, and now this is actually the first mistake made in this game. Why is this a mistake? Well, actually because first of all, it's clear that black's idea is to attack this bishop, but it doesn't really do anything. The c file is the C file has a higher quality than this A file, because this A file, all of the squares are being controlled by white's pieces, while as the C file, at least you have an attacking point here. You can attack the C3 bishop. So if you go rook a7, just like played in the game, white can go bishop b5, and there's just nothing you can do. And in the game, Nepo said, okay, I'm just going to go into a position with my rooks, rook a2, but basically it doesn't really do anything. It might look a bit scary, but actually it just doesn't do anything. Queen e3, attacking the b6 pawn, and after rook c2, so Nepo is trying to put all of his two rooks on the second file to put a lot of pressure on the g2 and h2 pawns. But actually this idea doesn't really have any good effects. And bishop f1 was played. Now, actually, after bishop f1 here, Nepo blundered. And he actually played a very reasonable move. And it's very, in human eyes, it is just a very, what's the move? You're just following your plan. So there's no reason that it's a blunder. But in the game, first of all, he played rook a2. And this is a blunder. Because, why? I'm going to show you guys later, because in the game, Nodirbek did found the best reaction. But let's first of all focus on this position. What black should have done instead. And what Nepo should have done instead was to, first of all, form an idea. And this idea is actually very interesting. First of all, you can go actually bishop c7. So bishop c7, what is this move? So first of all, let's just say if white goes knight c4, because white is going to go knight c4 anyways, attack the bishop and the pawn, so it's first of all necessary for you to retreat your bishop back. And after the bishop war on c7, now you have this b5 move. And this b5 move, if you go back with the knight a3, then in the future, for example, right now, black has this queen e6 move, threatening, like attacking the rook, and also threatening to go bishop b6. So this is actually a possible idea for black, but it's actually not that easy to spot. So in the game, anyways, rook a2 was played, and actually, I mean, this move is just very reasonable because rook c2's idea is to go rook a2, so there's no reason to stop this idea. You just need to follow your own plans. But unfortunately, the engine says this is a positional blunder. Why? Because white can now go knight c4, and actually he is winning a pawn already. Bishop b8 was played. If you now go bishop c7, then actually here white can go knight a3, and this rook is simply just trapped inside. If you could try your best to go queen e6, say like if you take my rook, I'll take yours, but actually it doesn't really matter because now white can just go rook db1 to defend this b3 rook, and this rook is just simply trapped on c2. So let's go back here, and after knight c4 here in the game, bishop b8 was played, and knight a3, this rook is just simply trapped inside, and although he does have this b5 move, threatening bishop a7. So you do have to be careful about bishop a7, because if you allow that to happen, then you will be in real big trouble. So actually, in this situation, you don't really have to worry about bishop a7 because it actually works here after knight c2. Knight c2 is actually possible because now if you go bishop a7, there's this very an excellent move, knight d4, giving the piece back. And after e takes d4, bishop takes, and even though actually, first of all, white is up half a piece, and also he is up a pawn. So this is enough for white to win. So that's why in the game, actually Nodirbek, he didn't play knight c2 because probably he thought that after knight c2 there was bishop a7, but I guess he didn't see knight d4, or maybe he thought that after knight c2 there was something like, you know, I think something like knight e4. Can this work? Actually, it doesn't work. Or bishop e4, because I was thinking that if you go bishop e4 and after f takes c4 there's bishop a7, and now if you go knight d4 and if you take on, well, actually taking is not the best move, but you do have some knight g4 ideas here, but it actually doesn't work. After queen f3, let's say queen g5, and after, for example, like h3, black is just trying to create some counterplay, but unfortunately I guess it doesn't work at all. So, but anyways, Nodirbek in the game with only 1 minute left on the clock didn't see this idea and played knight b5 instead, missing the winning advantage, like the winning idea immediately. And after knight h5, rook a3. Now this is a mistake. What he should have done is actually to go bishop d2 to block this second rank, because it's actually very deadly. Black is now putting a lot of pressure on g2 and threatening to go knight f4 on the next move, and it's actually like white needs to do something here to stop black from doing, like, to creating so many counterplay on the king side. But instead he played this rook a3 move, offering a trade, and after rook takes a3, knight takes a3, and again here Nepo actually here blundered with rook takes c3. Probably he thought that this rook was just trapped inside, but still he had this bishop a7 move, and now if you actually, there's just no way for you to block. If you go bishop d4 to block, then actually there's just e takes d4. But if you go, for example, after bishop a7, the only way is to go knight c2, but actually now in this position, it is white who will be trying to hold the draw, because I mean this is just a position where black cannot lose. So actually here Nodirbek didn't, like, Nepo didn't see that bishop a7 move, and instead played rook takes c3, and actually this is already winning for Nodirbek, but instead he took with rook queen takes c3, and after bishop a7, king h1, queen h4, but instead in this position he gave all of his advantage away. And actually this position is a very critical one in this whole game, because there's just one only move here which can be winning for white, and that only move is to take on e5. So first of all, preventing knight g3 checkmate, and then basically just controlling all of the threats that black has. If you go queen f2 here to threaten mate on g3, he just basically needs to move this bishop away, and it's just pretty safe for white. But again, with only 1 minute left on the clock, and it's actually very hard for you to for anyone to see so clearly in time trouble. So in the game, he played queen c8, which is also a very reasonable move, but actually, unfortunately, there's king h7 after queen g4, queen f2, bishop c4, knight f4, and probably Nodirbek, he didn't saw this move because after knight f4, he played rook f1, and after queen d2, black's pieces are just way too active, and after bishop a6, a terrible blunder by Nodirbek. If he had played something like knight b1 instead, attacking the queen, there's probably still some holding chances left, but unfortunately he didn't play that and instead blundered with bishop a6, losing this game immediately after queen a2. I mean, black is just winning material back, and there's nothing white can do. And even here, he doesn't even take on a3. Of course, if he had took on a3, it will be also winning for him. But instead, he played the best option. Nepo played the best option here to win, which is knight d3, threatening knight f2. And after queen h4, queen e2 was played. And here, Nodirbek resigned because there's just no way to stop knight f2. This rook is being attacked, and once it moves to, for example, to b1, there's knight f2. So this game was so Nepo actually won this game, and he also won first place. This is actually a very critical game. But Nodirbek also showed some excellent defending skills, but in the end, with under time pressure, he did blunder a few moves and made a few mistakes. But anyways, this was a high quality game. Nepo had 89.5 accuracy and Nodirbek had 85.7 accuracy. So both players actually played or showed how strong they are. And of course, this is just a rapid game. If it were a classical game, I suppose it will be even more accurate, played by these two players, and even more interesting. But anyways, so I hope you guys enjoyed this game. And please subscribe. See you in the next video. Bye!